There's a moment that happens in certain situations, a quiet, clarifying, almost inevitable moment where the truth of something becomes visible to everyone in the room, not just to the people who have been living inside it, where the thing that has been obvious to some and hidden from others suddenly equalizes, where the question that has been sitting unasked in the air finally gets spoken out loud by someone brave enough or simply honest enough to say it. And when that question is asked, and when the person it is directed at has no answer, when the silence that follows is more revealing than any answer could have been, something shifts, something that cannot be unshifted. That moment has happened, or it is happening. And Virgo, I need you to understand what it means, not for the person it happened to, but for you. Because the significance of this moment lives not in what was revealed about them, though something real was revealed, but in what it makes available to you, in what it finally, after everything, gives you permission to do. Let me start by describing what I feel when I sit with your energy today, because there is something in it that I want to acknowledge before anything else. There is a quality of vindication in your energy that is real and that deserves to be named, not the loud, dramatic kind of vindication, the quiet kind, the kind that arrives not with triumph but with a slow exhale. The kind that feels less like winning and more like being finally, undeniably seen as having been right about something that cost you something real to hold on to. That feeling, the specific, particular relief of having your perception confirmed after a period of doubting it is legitimate, it is real, and I want to honor it before we go anywhere else. Because here is what I keep sensing when I sit with the broader story of this situation. There was a point, possibly a long point, possibly one that stretched across more time than it should have, where you were the only one who fully understood the weight of what was lost when this person let you go, where the people around them perhaps did not grasp it, where even this person themselves may have been operating under a set of assumptions about your replaceability, about the ease of what they were choosing, about the reality of what they were walking away from, that were not accurate. And you felt that gap between what you knew to be true and what was being treated as true, between your understanding of your own value and the way that value was being handled. That gap has closed. That is what I feel in this reading, and the closing of it is significant. Something shifted in the perception of the people around this situation. A question was asked by someone who had been watching, who had been paying attention, who had reached a point where the silence around the obvious thing became impossible to maintain. And the question was this: why did you let them go? And the answer that came back, or more precisely, the absence of an answer, the silence and the looking away and the fumbling for something that did not come, that silence said everything that needed to be said. It confirmed what you already knew. It confirmed what the people asking had suspected. It confirmed in the most public and most undeniable way that there was no good answer, that there is no version of the truth that makes letting you go look like a reasonable decision. Mm, I want to stay with this for a moment because I think there is something here that goes deeper than the surface event, something more important than the fact of the question being asked or the silence that answered it, something that I feel is actually the center of this reading, even though it might not seem like it at first. Because readings like this one Ones that are ostensibly about what is happening in someone else's life are almost never really about the other person. They are about you, about what the external event is making available to you internally, about what this moment is offering you that has nothing to do with them and everything to do with where you go from here. The thing I keep coming back to, the thing that feels most significant in your energy right now, is not what happened to them. It is what is happening in you. Because the external confirmation of your value, while real and while meaningful, is not the most important confirmation available to you right now. And I say that not to minimize what happened, it is genuinely significant, and you are allowed to feel whatever you feel about it, but because I think there is something in this moment that is offering you something more lasting than the satisfaction of being vindicated. It is offering you the opportunity to fully, finally, completely let go. Let me explain what I mean by that because I think it is the heart of this reading and I want to be precise about it. There is a specific way that we hold on to situations in which our value was not recognized. Even after we have moved forward logistically, even after we have stopped communicating, stopped waiting, stopped doing the obvious things that signal attachment, we can continue to hold a question, a quiet background question that we do not always consciously acknowledge, but that lives in us nonetheless. The question of whether we really were as valuable as we believed, whether what we felt about ourselves in that situation was accurate or inflated, whether on some level the way we were treated reflected something true about us that we have been trying to argue against ever since. That question is exhausting to carry. And it tends to be carried quietly, without announcement, beneath the surface of what appears to be moving on. And the energy I feel in you today, the vindication, the confirmation, the external acknowledgement that there was no good answer for letting you go, I feel it as an opportunity for that background question to finally, genuinely, permanently be put to rest. Not because external confirmation is the only valid source of self knowledge. It is not, and I want to be clear about that. Your value was never actually in question. The question was always a distortion, a story your mind constructed to make sense of being treated in a way that did not match your actual worth. But sometimes we need the external world to offer us something concrete before the internal story can fully release. And this moment, this question asked and not answered, this silence that said everything, this is that concrete thing. Use it, not to feel superior to anyone, not to dwell in the satisfaction of someone else's discomfort, but to let the background question go, to close that particular door inside yourself, to stop giving any portion of your energy to the project of proving something that has now been demonstrated without your effort or your involvement. You were right about yourself. You have always been right about yourself. And now the world around this situation knows it too. I want to speak to what I feel about where your energy actually belongs in this moment, because I think that is the most useful thing I can offer you today, not an extended analysis of what happened to this other person, but a clear eyed sense of where your attention, your investment, your forward momentum most productively goes from here. What I keep sensing in your energy is potential, genuine, substantial, ready to be expressed potential that has been somewhat occluded by the weight of this unresolved situation. Not entirely you have been living your life, building your life, moving your life forward, but partially. The way a light is partially occluded by something standing between it and the space it is trying to illuminate. And now that the situation has reached this particular point of external resolution, now that what was true has been confirmed in a way that is visible and undeniable, I feel that occlusion beginning to lift. I feel your energy beginning to have more of itself available, more of it free to go toward the things and people and possibilities that actually belong to your future, rather than remaining tethered to a past that has now finished resolving itself. That freed energy is significant, and what you do with it matters. Let me speak to the specific areas where I feel this newly available energy wanting to move, because I think it is important to make this concrete rather than leaving it abstract. In the area of your own sense of self, your confidence, your trust in your own perceptions, your willingness to show up fully in new situations without the protective guardedness that comes from having had your value mishandled. I feel a genuine opening, something that was slightly contracted beginning to expand again. And the specific contraction I am describing is one that most people experience after being in a situation where they were not fully valued. A subtle pulling back, a slight reduction in how readily they extend trust, how openly they invest, how fully they allow themselves to be seen in new contexts. A learned caution that made sense as a response to what happened, but that can outlast its usefulness. The opening, I feel, is an invitation to let some of that caution soften, not to abandon discernment, never that. Your discernment is one of your most valuable qualities. But to let the posture of protection relax slightly, to allow yourself to approach new people and new possibilities with a little more of the openness that is natural to you when you have not been recently reminded of what happens when that openness is met without care. Because you are moving into a period where the quality of what is around you is rising to match the quality of what you bring. And meeting that with a slightly more open posture than you have been maintaining will allow it to actually reach you. In the area of your relationships and connections more broadly, I feel a clarity arriving, a clarity about who actually sees you and who is operating with an incomplete picture of your value. And what I sense is that the people who genuinely see you, who have always seen you, who did not need the external confirmation of someone else's silence to understand what you are worth, those people are becoming more prominent in your energy, more present, more relevant to where you are going. And the connections that were sustained by habit or by loyalty to what something used to be rather than what it currently is, those are completing their natural cycle, not dramatically, simply the way things that no longer fit eventually and naturally fall away to make room for things that do. I want to speak to something that I feel is energetically present for you in the coming period because I sense it clearly and I think it is relevant to where you are right now. There is a new quality of recognition approaching. Not the recognition that comes from someone's silence in the face of a question about why they let you go, though that has its own significance, a different kind. The recognition that comes when what you actually carry, your depth, your particular gifts, your quality of presence, the specific and irreplaceable way you show up in the spaces you inhabit begins to be met by people and circumstances that have the capacity to receive it fully. I keep sensing an encounter, a connection, something that arrives in your life with a quality of genuineness that you will recognize almost immediately because it will feel different from what has felt like recognition before. Less complicated, less like something you have to work to maintain or decode or manage, more like simply being seen without effort, without strategy, without the performance that becomes necessary when you are trying to be valued by someone who does not naturally recognize your value. That recognition, effortless, unperformed, simply accurate, is approaching. And the version of you that is going to receive it is the version that has been freed by this moment of external confirmation from the last of the background doubt about your own worth. The version that no longer needs anyone's silence or stumbling or public inability to justify a choice to know that you were worth choosing. The version that carries that knowledge from the inside quietly, completely, without requiring external proof, because the external proof has already arrived and done its work and can now be released. I want to speak to something about the way you love specifically because I feel it in your energy and I think it is relevant to what is approaching you love with your whole self. That is not a performance of love, not the curated, carefully managed version that keeps enough in reserve to avoid the full cost of vulnerability. You love with actual depth, actual presence, actual investment in the reality of another person. You show up for people in ways that go beyond what is required or expected. You remember things. You notice things. You extend care in the specific, particular, unglamorous ways that actually make a difference in another person's daily life. And that quality of love, the real kind, the kind that costs something, is not something most people encounter often. It is not something easily replaced once it has been experienced. And it is not something that can be honestly answered for when someone asks why you would let it walk away. That is what the silence confirmed. Not just that you were good, that what you offer is rare, that the specific quality of your presence and your care and your way of loving is not something that exists in abundance, not something that can simply be found again in the next person who comes along. And the person who let you go is now sitting with the full weight of understanding that in the most public, most inescapable way, surrounded by people who see it clearly and who have now asked the question that makes the understanding impossible to continue avoiding. You do not need to do anything with that information. You do not need to respond to it or act on it or even think about it very much. It has simply completed a chapter, closed something that needed to be closed. And in closing it, it has handed you back something valuable, the energy that was being spent holding that chapter open, holding the question of your own value alive in a situation that was never going to answer it adequately. That energy is yours again now, fully, completely, to spend wherever you choose. You see, this is why the moment described in this reading matters. Not because someone looked foolish, not because the person who let you go was publicly unable to justify that choice. Those things happened, and they are real, but they are not the point. The point is what that moment does inside you, the permission it grants, the door it closes, the specific, stubborn, energy consuming project of quietly proving your value to a situation that was never going to adequately acknowledge it. That project is now complete. Not because you completed it through effort, because reality completed it for you, and you are free. Free to take the full weight of your attention and your investment and your extraordinary capacity for depth and care and genuine connection and point it toward things that deserve it, toward people who will not need a public question and an empty silence to understand what they have in you, toward possibilities that rise to meet what you bring, rather than requiring you to constantly recalibrate downward. That freedom is the real gift of this moment. More than the vindication, more than the confirmation, the freedom. I want to close this reading by saying something directly and simply, because I think directness is what this moment calls for. You are worth more than how you were treated. You have always been worth more. And the quiet work you did of maintaining your own sense of that worth through a period when the external evidence was not consistently supporting it, of continuing to show up as someone who knows their own value, even when that value was not being reflected back accurately, that work was not wasted. It was the very thing that has brought you to this moment intact. Whole, clear, ready, ready for what is next, ready for the quality of connection and recognition and life that has always been proportionate to what you actually carry. Ready to receive something real from people who recognize it as real without needing to be told. That is where you are standing right now, not in the past, not in the story of what someone else failed to understand, here in the present, with all of that weight finally set down. Breathe. You are free. If this reading reached something true in you today, if it named something you have been carrying quietly and are now ready to release, please leave a comment below. Tell me what you are putting down. Tell me what you are walking toward. I read every single word, and I am genuinely honored by this community. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their value was never actually in question, only someone else's ability to see it. A like helps this reach the people it is meant for. And if you are not yet subscribed, I would love to walk this journey with you. Virgo, the question was asked, the silence answered. Now you move forward.